Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Four and Field podcast. We're starting brand new, fresh off COVID-19 break for NASCAR. And we've got our best four guys out here. We got the host, Dom Caps. We've got Wesley Riddle. We got Steve Ray. And we got Kev McCormick Jr. How's it going, everyone?
Going good, man.
Going good.
Fantastic.
Well, so Wes, I'm gonna start with you. How have you been, the past few months, with this whole, COVID-19, how you holding up?
I've been pretty good. I've still been able to get a little bit of work hours in, so I haven't really been completely off the radar or stuck to the Xbox or stuck to just watching TV all the time. I've had a couple different things going on, so it hasn't been too bad. Trying to stay active. And I think now is a good time because we're finally starting to see some sports back on television, NASCAR being a big one for us, of course. And we're kind of getting back into a time where we're still kind of struggling right now. I feel like as a whole country and a whole nation, a whole world combined, but we're doing a lot better. And I think that at least for now, we're going to be able to see some more sports on TV and try to get back in the rhythm of this NASCAR season.
And Steve, how you doing?
I've been doing pretty good. These past couple months have been pretty busy for me. I graduated college back at the end of March and moved back to my home state. So it's just been a big adjustment of getting used to that. But now that everything, my personal life has kind of calmed down a little bit, this whole pandemic is still kind of shaking things up. So it is a little weird with springtime. I feel like baseball should be on and, that NASCAR should be, making its full spring run, but we're just getting back into the swing of things. But it is nice to see NASCAR back on TV, and I'm excited to see what other sports are going to do as far as opening back up, and I hope we get to do that soon. But it's nice to be able to at least start off with watching some NASCAR races. You can't go wrong with that.
And Steve, for everyone that doesn't know, Steve turned 21 yesterday. Steve,
Hey.
How'd you celebrate?
Well, went down to the liquor store, got some good beverages. So just enjoying that now. No better place to open it up than on the Foreign Fuel podcast.
All right, and Kevin, Kevin out there in Michigan, how's it going out there in Michigan?
Hey, it's been wild. Just finished college and that sort of thing. Really just been chilling and trying my best to find some way to manage through all this COVID stuff. Been trying to watch any type of sports that are on, whether it's UFC, cornhole. I was watching that last night. Watching some cornhole, replays of sporting events, The Last Dance, all that stuff. So it's good to see NASCAR back, though. It's definitely I'm glad to see them kind of take the first step and getting sports back in the world. So,
and on Sunday at Darlington, the return, we had NASCAR, the Cup Series race had more viewers than the last episodes of The Last Dance, which actually really surprised me because The Last Dance has been really hyped up. I personally haven't seen it yet. I'm going to here soon. But, it's actually surprising to see NASCAR get the numbers that they had because you look on Twitter and you see NASCAR's coming back, CNN breaks it and ESPN, pays attention to it now that it's the only thing out really. And all you see in the comments is, oh God, I'm good. I don't want to watch anything. It's NASCAR. I don't even want to watch it. Anything but NASCAR.
yeah.
And I mean, to get the almost 7 million viewers, which was the most watched non-Daytona 500 since Atlanta in 2017. So it's good to see. And I'm curious what you guys think. You think that's a good number, bad number? 7 million viewers for a first race back.
I think it's a really good number, especially for the first race out of the gate. When I was scrolling through Twitter on Sunday night, I saw a lot of people tweeting out there that they just watched NASCAR for the first time and that they loved it. And there was really not a better track to do it than Darlington. That track produces such great racing. And to see all these new fans come in and say, I just watched NASCAR for the first time, my view on it was totally skewed. It's great. I think it was great for the sport to be the only one out there. So for the people that love sports and was really just willing to watch anything, it was great exposure for NASCAR to be the first one back out there.
Yeah, to go off what Steve said, yeah, I was on Twitter too, and I saw a ton of people saying that they watch it for the first time. But a ton of people a ton of my friends that know I like NASCAR, they DM me, said, "Hey, I watched the race. I actually kind of like it. Now I know why you watch it every week and all that stuff." So it was good to see the kind of the views go up for NASCAR. If there's any time to do it, this is the time because there's really no other sports out there. Because most of the time, right now, they're kind of overshadowed by usually baseball and football and all that stuff. But with no sports being there, and also like the NBA and all that stuff. But now they're the only sport out there right now for the most part, besides like UFC. So this was a good time for them to really get going. And from what I saw on Twitter and everything, the feedback was great. So that I think is really good for NASCAR.
And of course, it's like pretty unfortunate with the timing that we have going on right now that this is the way that we have to get the viewership. But it's something that NASCAR has needed for a while. Because Dom, you had mentioned that we haven't really had the viewership in NASCAR this big or this monumental since 2018, I think is what you said. So now that we had something to kind of fall back on, unfortunately, like I said, it was the wrong time or not the best time, but at least we have something that could maybe be a potential help for the sport in the future because it has struggled over the years with viewership. And NASCAR right now, along with the UFC, both of them are like the only two sports on right now. So that's what people are looking to because I feel like a lot of the times people get bored with television. Sometimes people do get bored with Netflix after they finish their show. They try to find something else to do. And of course, everybody enjoys sports. So the fact that these are really the only two things, mixed martial arts and NASCAR, to fall back onto, you may not be the most interested in it, but at least we're getting people that could become potential fans in the future.
Exactly. It's something to build on top of. So,
of course.
And Wes, you're really into MMA too. You know, how, if you had to compare both, you know, how has, you know, in MMA, how has that been covered and how is that been really different, you know, since the whole pandemic?
I haven't really checked too much into the numbers itself, but I felt like the reception from it was pretty good. Then again, I don't think it was as good as NASCAR's, but I feel like it's because NASCAR's viewership has been a lot lower, and the increase in viewership was a bigger number than it was for the UFC because the UFC has been pretty big for a long, long time now. They've always kind of peaked right there with their viewership when Fox Sports won, and of course now being on ESPN. So with the UFC in particular, I feel like their viewership didn't really rise too much. I didn't think it did. But then again, I don't have the numbers to fall back on. I could be really wrong. But they already have a lot more viewers, or already had a lot more viewers than kind of where we were with NASCAR at this point in time. But I feel like even though it's a little hard to compare, it's definitely going to be good for both because they're the first two that are getting back into this mix of the sports competition that we haven't seen for a while out of anybody. And I know, Kevin, you mentioned before the podcast, we were talking about like cornhole. You mentioned cornhole. Probably not if people are going to watch that, but sports that I feel like people are more familiar with, especially racing, automobile racing, and of course with mixed martial arts. Those are two. So I feel like this is going to help these two maybe more than others. But we'll just have to see as some of these phases in different states kind of progress as the virus kind of calms down.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see how NASCAR approaches the remainder of the schedule because we had, you know, we're up through June 21st. Now that'll be, you know, ending with Talladega. But then you have Pocono that next week, which is supposed to have this huge doubleheader weekend. And the governor just announced that they're going to make that town or county into a yellow zone, which is like still restricted, but like not as heavily. So I'm curious to see if they're going to maybe move that race back to try to get fans there, or they're just going to just get it done with, because I feel like that's going to be hard because they're trying to avoid hotels and they're trying to make it one day stays. But it's kind of hard if you have to do 2 cup races at the same track. I don't think it's possible to run 2 races that day, especially at a track with no lights. There are no lights at Pocono. So be interesting to see what they do at Pocono. Personally, for me, having tickets to the race, I'd really like for it to get pushed back to a point where I could go. But I'll be interested to see with that. I want to get your guys' take on what you think the remainder of the schedule is going to be like. You think they're going to keep it around the same, or is we're going to get a huge mashup?
Right now, I think it's going to be a huge mashup. We're going to see tracks at all different kinds of different points. We see Talladega in June. We haven't seen that for decades when it used to be in July. I think we're going to see primarily on the East Coast, where teams can stay close to the shops in Charlotte. And it's hard because with the championship race still planned for Phoenix out on the West Coast, and they've already canceled Sonoma, and thankfully they got the West Coast swing done. But I think we're going to see primarily the tracks that the NASCAR is going to go to is going to be on the East Coast, Richmond and Martinsville, Talladega, tracks that they can get to pretty quick from the Charlotte shops.
Yeah, Wes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see because I've heard a lot of people talk about when the second wave is going to come of this virus. I've heard different talks from different people, and of course in the news, that there could be a second wave of this that comes either in August or could come sometime in the winter that could be a lot worse than what we've already seen now. And if that's the case, it could definitely throw off this whole schedule again, depending on what time it might come, if it even comes. But it's hard to tell what's going to happen. I do kind of like seeing a lot of the tracks still on the East Coast. I think it's a good business decision, and it's also where a lot of NASCAR's roots come from, which may not be the best scenario in the world, especially for people on the West Coast or people that are trying to become fans of the sport. But as we just mentioned a little bit ago, it's already on television, and this is one of the first sports that is back for viewership. So I think even though they might not be able to make it at the race, at least the viewership levels are going to go up, and it is attracting more fans from around the world, and especially here in the United States. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I still kind of like the schedule, kind of how they're trying to work it in all close to the shop. I wouldn't mind if they get all the races in, and I wouldn't really care too much if they don't. It's going to be completely up to them, but it'd be nice if they can at least maybe get somewhere between 26 and 30 races in at the end of the schedule, because I'm not sure if they've completely finalized what we have right now.
Yeah, so Kevin, we were talking about this remainder of the schedule, what you think would be the best decision, whether to try to hold the schedule as good as they can or try to just mash it up to get the races done. What are you thinking the schedule might look like here to end the season?
Oh man, I think they should probably just try to maintain the schedule as best they can. I did like the amount of races they had this week, at least as a viewer. But you have to think in the mind of a driver and the pit crew and all them, it's definitely tiring to go back and forth and have all these races each week. So I'd say try to just maintain the schedule as best they can for the rest of the year and try to reset for next year.
Yeah, and Steve, I know you have something.
Yeah, I was even thinking about it today when I was outside of what they could do to the schedule and how they're going to keep things close to their shops. Like we saw this last weekend at Darlington, not that far away from Charlotte. They already canceled the Chicagoland races for this year. And I was thinking today that so many fans didn't like seeing the Daytona July 4th weekend tradition go away this year. And I know NASCAR was trying to add in some hype with Daytona being the regular season finale. But with the schedule already doing these twists and turns that it already is, I think this would be a really popular move for NASCAR to maybe take a year off from Indianapolis, put Daytona back to the July 4th weekend, because NASCAR has already been making pretty popular moves among the fans so far. And I think this would be another positive step in the right direction and bringing Daytona back to its traditional July 4th weekend.
It's actually interesting because that you bring that up. We saw a couple days ago the Indianapolis Motor Speedway president actually made a claim that he thinks Indianapolis could have the chance of bringing fans back to the track, and that being the track that brings fans back first. And they have that doubleheader with the IndyCar series running the road course, and you have the Xfinity cars running the road course as well. And actually, Tony Stewart's going to run that race, which would make him the first Hall of Famer ever to drive as a Hall of Famer. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I don't think anyone would be opposed to seeing Daytona over Indianapolis whatsoever. I mean, they're going to run Darlington 3 times this year. So I think limiting a track to 2 times is out the window. I think you just run what you can to get 36 races done. So it's not a bad idea. I know NASCAR is close to getting the finalized or, updated
Revised
schedules.
schedule, yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen with some of these states because it's all of a state-by-state case now. So it's not a bad idea. I would not be opposed to it. I don't think anyone in this world would be opposed to it who wants to see Indianapolis when it's been one of the most boring races the last few years. So, yeah, I like the idea. We'll see if NASCAR, is thinking the same way. We'll have to see. But, speaking of Daytona, I think we should go back to the first 4 races of the season, just kind of quickly go over them. If we have any thoughts, what you saw from the racing, maybe, because we're gonna see this car again next year. That's one thing that kind of people are downplaying right now. The next gen car is not coming out next year as planned. That's being moved back to 2022. So we're going to see the same car and package we have now going in the next season. So a lot of what you're seeing this season is what you're going to see next season. So Daytona, I think this year's 500, it had so much action, just like every other 500 with the new super speedway package. We saw a lot more runs, a lot more passing for the lead as compared to past years where the leader kind of was able to control. If they were good at blocking and had a good car, they were able to control the race. And obviously we saw a crazy finish, Denny Hamlin taking the win. I don't know if any of you have any comments on what you saw, that kind of stood out to you.
Yeah, it was the race was amazing. The action was just phenomenal to watch. But getting down to the last lap and seeing the crash with Ryan Newman, it was pretty hard to go to sleep that night, not knowing his condition and how he was. I was too young to remember watching the 2001 Daytona 500, but it reminded me a lot of that, and I felt that I could connect with some of the older generation fans that lived through that, and just how scary that is and how fragile life was. And thankfully, Ryan Newman is back at the track today. But it was pretty hard to sleep that night.
Yeah, the race itself was fun. It was fun to watch. Really action-packed, lots of runs, like how you were saying, Dom. There's some single file stuff in there, but overall, it was a really good race. And obviously, the end was definitely really scary. I wasn't even alive for a Dale Earnhardt's wreck in 01, but I texted my mom, and she said she had that same kind of weird gut feeling that something was not right, especially since, again, we didn't know what his condition was that night and really throughout the next day until right around noon the next day. So it's good to see Newman back in the car, back being himself, racing hard. So yeah,
I think it's a lot better now that things have kind of settled down. We see Ryan Newman, like you said, Kevin, back in the car, but definitely for that period of time, it was still hard. I feel like a lot for us and also for everybody, because it did kind of have that sensation of just not a good vibe, and I felt like it kind of spread out through pretty much everybody in the NASCAR community after that wreck had happened. But thank goodness for his recovery. It'd be unfortunate to see another unfortunate tragedy happen in NASCAR, but I think it's a good reminder in a crash like that the sport is not – it's safe, granted, the safety of the cars, but anything can still happen in the sport. It's a sport just like anywhere else, and anything can happen in the car or to the person at any time. So it's a good reminder of just not only the advancements that we made in technology, but the fact that we still need to cherish life. And I felt like that was a good takeaway from the race. But unfortunately, it did kind of take away from the finish. The finish itself was great. The racing was great. But at least now we can kind of look back and say thank you and thankful, or at least we are thankful for kind of the outcome that we were able to get from it. And now things are looking into a better direction for the rest of the year, hopefully.
Yeah, it definitely was a great 500. Denny Hamlin took home his second consecutive win in the Great American Race, his third overall. And, they went on next week to Las Vegas, saw a pretty good race there, crazy restarts. And, you Yeah, I really feel for Ryan Blaney and Alex Bowman from that race because they were going to have a great battle. I felt like Bowman was charging at the end, and a caution came out, late in the running, and then you had a group of people pit, a group of people stay out, and it was the guys that stayed out that ended up prevailing on like 40 lap old tires, which is one thing I do not like about this. I feel like you should not be able to hold your own and really not get beat on 40 lap old tires. But we saw Joey Logano get the win. Matt DiBenedetto was second. Ricky Stenhouse third. Austin Dillon fourth. I mean, that's a top five. And Jimmy Johnson fifth. Bubba Wallace sixth. I mean, that whole top six is just, you had some unexpected names. Ty Dillon 10th. That race was interesting. It's kind of resembled a mile-and-a-half race from last year. It's kind of hard to pull away. The draft seems to have a really big effect with these cars.
I think that's a good thing. Fans have been wanting better mile-and-a-half racing, and so to be able to have the leader not get that far away does produce better racing. But going back to your point, there should be no way that 40-lap-old tires should be handling better than brand new sticker tires. So NASCAR still needs to make some tweaks, but they have been moving in kind of the right direction, where we are getting more side-by-side racing, 3-4 wide on the restarts. And I think they're moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wes?
Yeah, I agree. I think NASCAR is trying to make the steps that they need to be able to get to a point to where, I mean, it's already appealing to a lot of fans, but I feel like it's something that everybody can watch, that everybody can become a big fan of and be interested in the cars that they see on the track, and the way that they race and the way that they handle. I think that especially the Vegas race, I thought it was a great one. It was nice seeing a lot of guys that we don't typically see in the top five, especially finish up near the front. But yeah, we did see like Ryan Blaney and Alex Bowman, two guys that have honestly had probably 4 or 5 of the if you look at the 4 or 5 best drivers in NASCAR at the moment, or not, I wouldn't say NASCAR, but at least this season they're in the top 5 without a doubt when it comes to where they've been able to compete. That was a race that unfortunately didn't really pay out in their favors, but good runs for them. And of course, Joe Logano, former champion, was able to get his first win of the season.
And I think going back to what NASCAR is doing real quick is that I think what a lot of people don't understand is that this isn't an overnight change. It's a lot of research and development that goes into these cars, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And as much as we want to see better racing, as soon as the next race, things take time to develop, and it's a lot of engineering that goes into this. And so I think, everyone just needs to have a little bit of patience, and things are trending in the right direction. I think NASCAR is starting to listen to the fans a little bit more. And, hopefully we saw some pretty good racing at Darlington, and I hope that continues.
I mean, it's good to see the mile-and-a-halves, have some more competitive racing as years past, but I definitely just need more fall off on the tires. Just really need fall off. That's what produces great racing is, long runs, comers and goers. That's where you get your best racing, is when the tires start to wear out. And track where the tires do wear out was Auto Club, the next race they went to, second race in the West Coast swing. Honestly, though, the past couple of years with this package, it seems like Auto Club is kind of taking a dip in the action. I feel like that stretch from like 2011 to like 2015, that's when you had like prime Auto Club, like exciting racing, a lot of passing, great finishes. We just haven't really gotten the finishes lately. It's been a lot of just domination. We had Kyle Busch one year, Martin Truex Jr. almost lapped the field, and another year, and this year it was all Alex Bowman. So that's one thing. Auto Club's still a great track. I don't think they better not touch the track, repaving wise, or that track's gonna probably lose the great racing it has. But definitely, taking the dip kind of on the competitive side the last couple of years.
It's been nice to see the Chevy teams, especially Alex Bowman, really excel. And with that new body style they have on the Camaros, I think they've really taken a big leap forward this year as opposed to last year, where they really struggled for most of the races. we've seen Alex Bowman almost won Vegas and then went on to win California and has been consistently running in the top 10. Not just him, but you look at the other 3 Hendrick cars alongside Bowman and the Chip Ganassi cars. And these tracks where it really depends on aerodynamics, we've been seeing the Chevy teams really take a big leap forward and move into that powerhouse position.
In West.
Yeah, it was.
Or
Oh yeah,
Kevin.
West, yeah.
No, yeah, whatever.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely good to see Bowman get the win. He really kind of came out of nowhere and kind of just took the whole thing. So it was good to see a young driver get a win. And like how Steve said, it was good to see Chevy kind of, back up on the rise again. So it was really good to see Bowman get that win, a well-needed win for him. So.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people know. I think a lot of people are just focused on Hendrick, but you have to look at Chip Ganassi and even RCR too. Both of them, they've all had their cars up front at different times in different some of these races that we've had already in the season. We've seen Austin Dillon have some good speed at times. Tyler Reddick has been, I feel like the rookie to watch. He's been in the top 10 almost every single week. And then of course you've got Jimmy Johnson back competitive again. William Byron's kind of the only one struggling, I feel like, from that camp at the moment. He and he's probably the biggest, but yeah, when it came to California, Alex Bowman just dominating with the Chevy car up there in the front. Chase Elliott also had some really good speed. We've seen a lot more out of those Camaros this year than we did last year. So I think it's a good sign for them in the future, and especially for the momentum that they have right now. If they're able to pick that up a little bit more, I think that we could see a lot more victories for them later on in the season.
Yeah, and you can move on to Phoenix, and you get Joey Logano getting another win. Definitely a lot better run for Joey Logano this time at Phoenix than last year in the playoffs at Phoenix. Joey Logano really missing the long run, but this year they seemed to make some adjustments, and they had a new package at Phoenix, which did produce better racing because in the fall it seemed like it was impossible to pass. It just seemed like whoever got out front and seemed to dominate, and Joey Logano was able to, get the win. He held off Kevin Harvick at the end. That's no easy task. Kevin Harvick is basically the king of Phoenix. So, other than that, he had a pretty typical top 5. It was Logano, Harvick, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, and Clint Boyer. And, I think the racing at Phoenix is pretty good. This is a, test for the championship race this year as Phoenix replaces Homestead. So I'm kind of interested to see, Steve, how do you think the championship race is going to go down? Do you think it's going to be better here than it was at Homestead?
No, I really don't think so. I think Homestead was really unique in its own sense, and it produced great racing. I do like that NASCAR is switching up the championship race with Homestead being the finale race for almost 20 years. But I think what we saw at Phoenix back in the spring produced great racing, and I think we'll see more of that come the fall once the teams get a better grasp on the package and they can get more aggressive with their race day setups. But I think it'll be a great race. Logano, like you said, was able to hold off Kevin Harvick, and it's really been interesting when Penske made the crew chief swap and gave everybody a new crew chief in a sense. I was really concerned with how Logano was going to work with Paul Wolfe if they could mesh. And they've been competitive week in, week out. And it seems like Logano has not missed a step. And that's paid big dividends for them.
Yeah, personally, I think if there's any track to change the finale to, Phoenix is the way to go. I like to change my NASCAR to move to kind of change it, like Steve said. Homestead has been the finale for a long time, and again, Homestead does produce good racing, but I think it was time for a change. But I think Phoenix, after seeing the spring race, I think the championship could definitely be a very good race. So we'll definitely have to see as time goes on. Hopefully, we make it there. Assuming this COVID stuff doesn't hit another wave, but I think the finale could be a very special one. So,
yeah, I agree. I like the kind of change there with putting Homestead a little bit earlier in the season, just because I feel like a lot of the times when we got there to that final race, it was 4 cars, especially recently, 4 cars versus the rest of the field, and the rest of the field, there was no focus on what was going on. So now finally, for the first time in years, we're actually going to see them talk about more than just the 4 drivers that are in the championship when it comes to Homestead. And also we're going to see teams kind of on a more even playing field. And I say that because a lot of teams, especially the championship 4, when they get there, they put all their resources and everything they have, they get all their crew, and they all come together for that one race to make sure that their car comes out as the champion at the end of the season. So now with it being earlier, I feel like it's not going to be that dependent on that focus. Granted, they always come to the track prepared, but not that much prepared. So I think we're going to see more guys that we wouldn't really expect to be championship favorites be up there at the front, especially like guys like Tyler Reddick, 2-time winner there, won both championships winning there. This package may not be his best, but we'll see how he's done good so far with it. Might see guys like him and Jimmy Johnson, a former winner. He might be able to come up there. The Chevy camp, as I mentioned, doing a lot better this year. So I think we're going to see more competition there at Homestead. But then again, going back real quick, the Phoenix race, Joey Logano, a guy that's always been pretty good there, was able to get a second victory already. We've already had, I guess, two now, 2-time winners this season. The other one was able to get his second win of the season at Darlington just this week.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a good championship race. I like how you brought up Homestead. Definitely, people aren't talking about that as much. We're gonna see a good race at Homestead, as literally every year since 2014, the champion won the race at Homestead. So we'll finally get to see a winner. If Kyle Larson was in the race, he would have been the favorite, but he's not going to be in the race. So, unfortunate circumstances for Kyle Larson, who could have gotten a win at Homestead.
Hey, wait, you can't hear me?
Whoa. But we're going to move. We're going to skip ahead. We're going to get to Darlington. So Sunday, we saw 400 miles at Darlington, and we saw Kevin Harvick kind of just dominate the field. Kevin Harvick, once he got out to the lead, he wouldn't give it up. That first pit stall really helped him. So, Steve, what did you see in NASCAR's return?
I think it was good to get back out on the track. Aside from Kevin Harvick kind of get out there and dominating, we saw some pretty good racing back and forth once the tires started to wear off a little bit. It was just classic Darlington racing. What I found to be pretty cool is that the more rubber that was laid down, a lot of guys were going towards the bottom in 3 and 4 and then actually making it work. So we saw kind of a 2-groove racetrack, which you don't see that often at Darlington, and that was pretty fun to watch. Guys diving into the bottom of turn 3 and then trying to pull a slide job, and that was really entertaining to watch. We saw all the Hendrick cars be extremely fast, and unfortunately for Jimmy Johnson, was half a lap away from winning the first stage and just was probably in over his head and took himself out of the race. So that was pretty hard to watch, but overall, just great racing on Sunday. And Kevin Harvick, once again, he didn't miss a step. He's back in victory lane.
Yeah, I think the return to NASCAR was great.
And we have some troubles with Kevin. We'll try to get him back. But Wes, I just want to ask you first, as the biggest Jimmy Johnson fan just ever, how did you react to the last lap crash in stage 1?
I'd like to claim a false statement there. I am a Johnson supporter, especially at this point, but as a Gordon fan my whole life. Then again, for real though, it was unfortunate to see a guy that I guess is making his, second to final start, depending on if they're going to make that final Darlington start, depending on how the rest of this year goes. But a guy that's been known to be good at Darlington and a guy that was a former champion finally run up front. That was the first time I feel like I feel like the only race in the past 3 years we've seen Johnson up front was maybe one Texas race, and it didn't even play out for him then. And I'm pretty sure that was last year. And then, of course, this year now, here at Darlington, a car that looked like it was capable of winning, unfortunately making just a mistake that cost them their whole race and put him out pretty early on. It was unfortunate to see kind of what happened to him because you always kind of want the best for those that are some of the best that we look up to try to go out on top. And unfortunately, it didn't come this week, and it didn't come at either Darlington race, but we might see him from him in the future because we have seen him have speed, not just this week, but other races that we've already had in the schedule, like Las Vegas was a big one. He was pretty quick there, and a couple others. So yeah, he I think he'll bounce back. But overall, I felt like the Darlington races were pretty fun. They were fun to watch. Darlington's always a special track because it's one of the toughest, as everybody's kind of mentioned and hinted on earlier. But we saw comers and goers in both races. We saw guys up front like Kurt Busch in the first race. Looks like he had a chance to win. Second race, he wasn't even there. And you look at this race that we had just the other night, the second race, Joey Logano wasn't even in the first race at all. He wasn't even a competitor or a factor. And then in the second race, he was up front for the majority of the time. Then he had guys like Byron and John Hunter Nemechek and Jimmy Johnson, of course, guys that were running good, but unfortunately didn't get finishes in some of their respective races. And he had guys that we didn't really expect to see up front a whole lot too. Like I mentioned, John Hunter Nemechek. Also had De Benedetto up there at one point, a guy who probably has only run Darlington a few different times in his career, and now is in the Wood Brothers car and is up there competing in the top 10 in both races. So it was fun. We saw a lot of different faces up there at the front battling for the win. Second race was interesting too with the finish. I would have been nice to see it finish under some green flag conditions because we had some guys coming. I think there were a lot of guys with 4 tires, but it would have been interesting to see how Hamlin, if he could have been able to hold them off. Harvick looking for 2 victories in a row because I'm pretty sure he had 4 tires and he was up there in third place after the incident between Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch. So he was up there too. He was coming. It was going to be I felt like it was going to be a crazy last maybe 15 laps, depending on when they got that restarted in the second race. But overall, the racing in both was a lot of fun. Multi-groove racing, of course, too, with people trying to dive down on the bottom and going to the top, just trying to make different parts of the track work. So it was a lot of fun.
And Kevin, I'm going to shoot this question to you. How shocked were you to see Ricky Stenhouse be the one to wreck on lap 1 in the first race?
I was not surprised at all to see Ricky Stenhouse wreck. It was funny because I had a dream before that race that they're gonna have a wreck in lap 1, and they did. And not to my surprise, it was Stenhouse causing the caution in lap 1 in typical Stenhouse fashion. So I was not surprised at all.
Yeah, we had some friends of ours call that. We said, watch, Ricky Stenhouse is going to, cause a wreck on lap 1. And lo and behold, he wrecked himself. Luckily, he did not collect anybody else. I'm pretty sure Quinn Houff is going to take out people if he didn't do that because Quinn Houff has never driven the track. And he had a moment going into turn 1 they showed after the wreck. But, if it wasn't for that, no, I think Quinn Houff would have caused some trouble. But he didn't. And, the second race is highlighted. I'm going to go to Steve, our Hendrick fan. Steve, you had some time to, let it sink in. What is your reaction to the Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott incident?
Yeah, I've had about 2 nights to think of this response. And it was hard at first because Hamlin was out there on old tires and Elliott was getting around Kyle Busch, and he was setting it up to pass Hamlin and hopefully pull away, or hopefully the rain was going to fall any minute then. At first it was really hard to watch because it looked like that battle some years back between Busch and Harvick at Darlington where they had that big pit road fiasco. It reminded me of that. But after looking at the replays, I think it was just a racing deal. Elliott was flying by on the outside, and Busch, like he said, was looking up in his mirror, and he saw Kevin Harvick coming on 4 fresh tires. And, the high line is key at Darlington, and Busch just wanted to get up in the high line and just misjudged his timing. That's really all you can call it, was just a misjudgment. So it was really unfortunate that Elliott was on the back end or on the bad end of that. It was really funny to see him shoot the bird towards Kyle Busch when they brought the cars back around. But man, it's just hard, to see a good race car like that just torn up.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, when I first saw it, I thought it was intentional, honestly, because it's Kyle Busch, and I was like, okay, some must have happened. But going back to what Steve said after watching the replays and stuff, I'm like, he may just mistimed it, and yeah, and he did. And after the race, he owned up to it. He said, yeah, I just made a mistake, and that's all you can really do if you're Kyle Busch is own up to the mistake, which he did. And he said he knew he couldn't really convince Chase fans that he didn't do it on purpose, but I mean, he had no reason to do it on purpose. So I mean, most people should know that okay, he did just make a mistake, and it happens. That's just NASCAR. He was trying to get in that top lane because, like Steve said, the top lane was the preferred line, especially going into turn one and being on the bottom going into one. It's tight. It's hard to keep it stuck on the bottom, and he was trying to get in line. He just mistimed it. He just made a mistake. So
Yeah, I feel like the whole thing was kind of an overreaction. I felt like the video was pretty clear. Kyle Busch made an apology. I feel like that should have been it. But of course, NASCAR fans are relentless, and all these people have different opinions and want to say different things. It was just a racing deal. It's pretty obvious he was just trying to get a line. Chase was, at that moment in time, the best car because he was in front. He was the one catching Hamlin with those 4 fresh tires. And had he pulled away, he would have probably won the race, especially with the rain that was coming. So Kyle Busch had to try to get up in front of Kevin Harvick, probably the second fastest car on the track, who already has a win this year and already won at Darlington. He just won at Darlington a couple days ago. So both of them were just flying through. He had to try something, misjudged it, and I thought it was that plain and simple. So I'm not going to try to just say
start.
it was just a racing deal. And I don't want to say too much about the fans, but I think that they should just understand that's all it was. And we're not going to see it again, depending on what Chase Elliott does. We'll have to just wait and see, depending on if he has some kind of retaliation. But I feel like if it'll come, maybe it'll be in the truck race that we have this weekend. But just something that's maybe not as significant for them, but rather than the big stage. But we'll see. We never know. I think it's still, though, blown out of proportion.
No. Of course. And I just want to say one last thing. I see the craziest thing. Do you go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? I see this post of somebody saying that Kyle Busch has just lost it. He's not the top dog anymore. So he forgot how to race up front. And then you got theories of, he wanted to have Denny Hamlin win the race, so he decided to take Chase Elliott out so Hamlin
could caution.
So, man, these fans are something else.
Have you ever? I'm never in a sport.
Yeah.
But there's NASCAR.
And, with Chase Elliott, giving the bird, everyone was kind of ratting on for doing that. Personally, I don't mind. I mean, you don't know what happened. You just got wrecked. You're about to get in the ambulance or whatever. You don't know what happened. You just saw yourself get turned and you're in the wall, and now you're out of the race. You probably could have won the race, especially with the rain that was in the area. So, all the fans said he shouldn't have flipped the bird. I mean, honestly, if I was him, if I didn't know what happened at the time, I probably would have done the same exact thing. I think, with 7 million people watching the race, honestly, that's probably good for the sport, honestly.
Yeah.
He had that type of passion that he's so mad they gave him the bird on the way around. That's some Tony Stewart stuff right there. So I think that was fun to see. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think it's good for the sport to have those two types of not egos per se, but personalities kind of mash up. Kyle Busch, and then you got Chase.
And we have
might have lost Kevin again.
To add on to his point, I thought it was great entertainment for especially these new fans that are watching. To have weekday primetime racing was honestly amazing. It was amazing getting a Wednesday night Cup race, and I think this is something that NASCAR is kind of unintentionally did, but I think it's something that they could build on. And they have a prime opening if they were to do but for certain tracks during the spring where baseball isn't quite here yet and football isn't around, you have a prime time weekday opening that you could really connect with a lot of fans. People that are coming home from work during the week and they just want to relax and watch a good NASCAR race. It'd be a little bit harder, down the stretch when you start getting into baseball and football playoffs, because Sundays just kind of mash up with a whole bunch of sports. But Wednesdays, nothing really is going on. And I thought that to have a Wednesday night primetime race, I know we're getting a Wednesday night race at Martinsville in a couple weeks. That should provide some great racing and hopefully some great ratings along with it too.
So we're getting about 40 minutes here. So I just want to, wrap this up real quick. We're not going to get in depth to what the racing we're going to get at Charlotte because we haven't really seen a mile and a half, in 3 months. So, and Charlotte's kind of its own beast. So there's really nothing to compare it to right now. So I just want to get your guys' picks for the 600. We won't worry about the Wednesday race. We may do an episode in between those races. But Steve, who you feeling, that's going to win on Sunday?
I'm leaning towards Martin Truex Jr., a 2-time Coke 600 winner in the past. I think we saw a lot of, during the first Darlington race, he really struggled with the car. Then during the second race, though, really some big improvements. It is a little bit of a learning curve, not working with Cole Pern this year. I think they had a really great chemistry. So I think he's still kind of working out the kinks and bumps that they got, and no other place to get a good momentum going than the Coca-Cola 600. I think Martin Truex Jr. wins on Sunday night.
Interestingly enough, I was actually kind of thinking the same thing. Martin Truex Jr. had a kind of rough start of the year, but I wouldn't say it was too bad because there were times he was still up at the front. It's just the results didn't really show in the end, especially at Daytona and the Phoenix race, if I remember correctly, where he was up front. I felt like at a time in that race, but then ended up, I think, getting taken out in a late race kind of incident. But I think that Truex, when it comes down to Charlotte, especially having 2 races here at the same track, I feel like one of them is going to have to go into his favor because this is a track that he's excelled at since he's been not only with Gibbs at the moment, but when he was with Furniture Row. This track has dated all the way back to his times in his earlier years, back in the mid-2000s, the late 2000s. Truex had always seemed to do better than the equipment and was able to compete well at Charlotte. So I feel like this is a track that suits him really well. I feel like it's more of his driving style. And I think that we're going to see him finally get that victory of the year that he's been looking for, since he hasn't really been able to get that top 5 momentum speed until these past couple weeks. I feel like Darlington is when we saw him right back up there in the mix. And I think Charlotte's going to be a track where he can. So I look out for Truex and pretty much the whole Gibbs team. I feel like they've all shown pretty solid speed this year, but if anybody needs to pick it up and show what they've got the most, Truex is going to be the guy, and I think this will be the track where he can do it.
All right, well, we got Kevin. He obviously isn't here right now. He's messaging in, and he is picking Casey Kane if he was racing, but he's going with Alex Bowman this week. He says he feels like he did good at Vegas, and he feels like he's going to excel another mile and a half. And for my pick, I'm going to go another driver in the Hendrick stable. I'm going William Byron to get his first career win in the Cup Series this Sunday in the Coca-Cola 600, kind of like another driver in the 24 car. 26 years since Jeff Gordon was able to do it. I think William Byron pulls that 24 car into victory lane. Obviously won't have the celebration Jeff Gordon quite had, but I think he gets it done. He could have won Darlington on Sunday, had such a fast car, and then kind of got mired, with that bad starting position on Wednesday. I don't think he really got to show what the car really had. I think William Byron qualifies on the pole and wins on Sunday. I think they're just due for a breakout race. Chad Canals, so he knows that track. He's won there a lot. They might have to name the track, Liberty University Speedway or Exalta Speedway after William Byron smokes them on Sunday.
That'll be a nice victory for his first one, especially coming at this time in the biggest race of the year. It'd be cool to see William Byron, especially in the 24 car, get a win like that.
It's his home track too.
Yeah. Oh, and if not him though, I think it would be nice to see somebody like Johnson just try to go out on top, especially at a track that he's dominated in the past, a track that has always had his sponsor located pretty much in every single half a second on the track when you drive past his sponsors everywhere. So be cool. It'd be cool to see Hendrick do pretty well, especially at this track. This is their track to do it. If it's not going to be Gibbs, a team like Gibbs where they've been showing great speed this year, I think Hendrick's going to be the team to look out for.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. That was Wes. That was Steve. And we had Kevin. Kevin is having some technical issues, but he did get to talk. We got his pick in. And I'm Dom Caps. Thanks for joining for the first episode of the Foreign Field podcast. We'll be back next week with, 1 or 2 episodes, depending on how we're feeling. All right. Have a good one, folks.